We did hydration last week, and that was amazing. And actually, for a moment here, I kind of want to go into what we might share in the hydration bit, and that would be that I didn't cover a simple concept. That, of course, we got to filter our water because there's chlorine in there. Chlorine, bromine, fluoride is put in a lot of water. Now, the chlorine especially is put in to purify our water and then also to keep it clean and pure from microbes and other organisms as it comes to our house. It's kind of like the delivery mechanism for our water. But just like the packaging on a piece of bread or something you might buy at the store, that might have packaging on it, you don't just grab the thing and start eating the whole thing without taking the packaging off. The chlorine is the packaging for our water in a way that helps it get safe delivery to our home, but you got to take the packaging off before you consume it. So that's kind of my analogy for chlorine, and recognizing that's a simple beginning is some kind of filtration for our water. And if you want to get back to the old hydration video, yeah, so that's part of our foundational program. Once again, the hydration being a really important step. And as you see, week 2, this isn't ignore the week part because we're going to be expanding this. This has been 2 weeks. The intention right now is to be doing something every 2 weeks with a bigger class lecture like this one. And every other week will be a question and answer, maybe a short 5 or 10 minute, thought of the week, concept of the week to be reminded of for our health. And then questions and answers to anybody who has those as they study some of these concepts. And of course, if you haven't seen the hydration video, it blew my mind just putting that together. And we're super excited about some of the things that are there in the hydrogen water realm. And in the, hopefully I'm going to try some deuterium. I've never done that before, but that's the highest level. You might study about the deuterium concept, but just simple electrolytes. I got it right here in front of me. So I'm trying to practice what I preach. I'm not drinking just plain water. Like I said, I drink electrolyte water, 99%, or maybe, let's be honest, maybe 80%. Because sometimes it's appropriate to drink just pure water. But that's just kind of a highlight review. And I think I've covered enough review for now. We're 3 minutes after the hour. And you see here, once again, we got a journey in front of us. We're going to be laying the foundation with each of these topics. Next week's super important. I do want to talk about this. One of my soul brothers, I want to say, David Wilcock, who claims he may have been the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce of all people. He passed away this week. And the story is that he took his own life. But a week before that, or a couple of days before that, he just finished preaching about how you should never do that. So the conspiracy is potentially that he was taken out, along with maybe 11 other scientists in this world that had some other specialized knowledge and maybe blow a whistle on certain things coming up. Nevertheless, in his final talks, David Wilcock talked about how he was leading global meditations. And he felt like there wasn't people in the space doing that very much. I do know there are some others. I have some patients who've clued me to some other great people out there leading meditation. But that's my topic coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to teach about the meditation component, which doesn't, here it is, meditation and mindset. The mindset's going to be more 2 weeks later. I got Lisa coming on board. She's going to be teaching the lifeline process a little about intention and affirmation and reprogramming your mindset. So that's going to be coming in 4 weeks from today. But this consciousness meditation part, we're going to do a meditation. I was telling Lisa, hey, we got to teach this. This is the single most important thing for your body, health, and life is to meditate. The reason why, not only are you getting in a parasympathetic rest, regenerate, heal state for your body, but you're getting your mind and spirit connected and lined up to receive your own divine communications for what you actually need to implement. And then, of course, the key after that is when you hear that divine inspiration and knowledge come through, you got to follow through, which is why I'm here today. I'm doing my best to follow through with the direction I'm given, which is to take the knowledge and inspired, enthusiastic life that God has given me and share it with others to help enrich their life. So thanks again for joining, and let's jump into the real webinar of the day. I do want to highlight just before that, we're going to get really deep down the road here as we cover, foundation module. You see this 10 weeks or so, or I don't know how many weeks it's going to take to cover these topics. Grounding, we're going to cover, maybe cover air, but we're going to go into microbiome healing, elimination, detox, parasite stuff, hormone optimization, see the genetics and methylation piece. And of course, the whole point of U University, it's got a big U in front of it because it's about you. One of the problems with medicine in the past and today being practiced is it's protocoled. It's like, oh, you got to do X, Y, Z, and you do it in that order, and it doesn't matter what condition you have, kind of, or who you are. We're going to treat you all the same. And one of the key concepts and foundations here is that you are unique, and you need to know what your body needs and listen to your spiritual direction so you can manifest the best part of your body. And that comes in that genetics and methylation piece in a big way, because that's one of the places we optimize in an individual level most obviously, right? And then memory, blood sugar, advanced biohacking, light, mitochondria, and frequency. Right now, you may not know it, but I'm glowing. And that's because I just finished sitting in front of a red and infrared light for about 45 minutes doing some yoga. So the truth is, all of us are literally glowing because light is emanating from our bodies. Inside our mitochondria, things are happening, and light's being formed and emitted, these biophotons. And research shows that if a Zen monk or something would put his hand out, you could measure the light coming from his hand, and with intention, it could be increased by 1,000 times. So take that into account when you put your hands on your body, especially when I'm working on you and I'm putting your hand on a certain spot in your body. I'm saying, hey, hold this spot, hold this point. I want you to get some energy, some intention, some breath, some flow into those areas. So that's a beautiful thing to be doing. And we're going to talk about that in this light and mitochondria and frequency module some more. So jumping out of this syllabus, as I want to call it, this foundations piece, I'm going to come into, I'm not getting there where I need to be. Here we go. Into the slides for today. So here it is. Root cause healing under this U university. That's the point. The point is getting the root cause for you is you're unique. So let's learn about how we can listen to our bodies and do that unique stuff. We're going to get into the keto basics. We're getting to intermittent fasting because we're going to talk about the what to eat a lot here. We're going to talk about why a little bit. And then I want to make sure we talk about who, just for a moment. Who are you eating with? Are you eating with your family? Are you eating with community? Are you having connection socially? Having a family meal together. My wife's going to write about that in her book on parenting that we're going to do in family. It's so important to have that social connection, and over food is a marvelous way to do that. Having a sacramental moment with your family, to have that connection to God and each other, and recognizing the oneness that we are. That's going to make your family bind together. That's going to bind your communities together, right? So eating alone, sometimes you got to do that. You're working, whatever. But when you can eat in community with the who, that's important too. We're covering the who, the what, the why, the when. We're going to cover the when. Like, should you be eating all the time? Should you be having periods of fasting? Well, that's obvious. We're going to learn about fasting. But then the where and how about the how you eat? That's not in my presentation, but the how is slow down, enjoy. My tendency in life is often to rush, rush, rush. And one of the lessons as I meditated recently was Spirit told me I got to slow down. And so the slowing down part, as you enjoy your food, as you chew fully, that's a huge part of getting your body to absorb nutrients right, is that slow down. That conscious breath is a great thing. That's why we begin all our meals with a prayer, right? So I highly recommend that. Blessing the food, eating with intention, eating with gratitude. That's a place we want to stay in for sure. So that's the how to eat. Let's talk about the why. Oh, backing up. Who am I? In case people don't know me, which virtually everybody here does, but there's the page about who I am. And, the experience I've had so far leading me to this place where I finally am feeling like I get to fulfill more of my mission, which is the teaching, right? Doctor means teacher. And one of my passions has always been in that teaching realm. And so you can see me excited about all this is because I really am, because this is who I am. And, in a natural way, we're going to teach the body and listen to the body, and we're going to learn that unique biology. I talked about the you are unique, you university. So yeah, we're going to find out how to help you, and you're going to find out how to help you. Even more importantly, this is about you. So beautiful. Why it matters? Well, we live in this world of ultra processed food. 70% of the food we see in our grocery store, ultra processed. 55% of your daily calories, driving inflammation, chronic illness, pain. Got to get out of that. We're reclaiming our energy and our clarity by having that all-day energy. We're going to be able to accomplish what we want to do, overcome the exhaustion, the chronic fatigue that is just ubiquitous now because our immune systems are bogged down and these chronic viruses are taking over. Now the COVID thing is, bogging us down more chronic viruses we got to deal with, and spike protein creating inflammation. So these are things we want to be, we're wrestling against in our modern world. And that's where we're going to get into that root cause level. And one of those is what you're putting in your mouth every day. One of the most powerful, important signals you're giving your body is what you put in your mouth every day. That's going to influence your hormone balance. That's going to influence your pain levels. And so in the future, we want to create these habits for our children as well. I begged my children a little bit. I want to beg them harder probably, but I invited them all. Hey, come and listen. You got to understand why we're eating this way, why we don't want you to just grab the easy, quick food and eat that high fructose corn syrup and other junk, right? There's ways we can do this and eat healthy even when you're busy. And so we're going to talk about how to make some better choices when it comes to that. Once again, why are we doing this? We don't want all these problems. We don't want to have a dysfunctional body that's got high blood sugars and an inflamed brain and brain fog and this huge disease burden that we're created because of the food industry partly, right? It's not our fault. It's not their fault either. It's just, part of capitalism was first feeding everybody and being abundant, and that's good. But now we got to start making some better choices and start using our consumer money and dollars to vote for those foods and those pathways that are going to support our full being in as much as we possibly can, right? It was great that we had grains come out in big ways and feeding lots of people, and they're making grains with glyphosate and other toxins, and at least the world doesn't have to starve anymore. But now as we get smarter and get more evolved consciously, we're going to start making better and better food. And we do that partly by us, each one of us, making a better choice on what we're investing in. That's going to help everything, right? So more why. In case you didn't have enough, those are all the negatives. You got to have the stick beating you up in the past, right? You want to avoid all those problems, but then you also want the carrot. Here's the carrot. I'm going to have energy and stamina. I'm going to have resilience. I'm going to be able to move my body with ease. I'm going to have the freedom to live, to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. I'm going to have that fully present confidence. So that's powerful. So here's the overview of the full presentation. First, we're going to cover a little more on those toxic ultra-processed ingredients. Not going to spend too much time there. Covered it a few times, but it is important foundational stuff. And then we're talking about those big five. We're talking about food sensitivities. We're going to get into some detail. There's going to be more detail probably in the future because some of those diet programs of a low histamine food, a FODMAP program, those are details that take a little bit of study to implement. And so we'll be answering questions about those and maybe having some dedicated classes about that kind of thing. But as we talk about paleo, and I didn't mention that the word Mediterranean is not on here, but the Mediterranean diet works well for a lot of individuals. Understanding how to get in and out of ketosis and have your body be metabolically flexible using the tool of intermittent fasting, that's a powerful tool. So once again, one more time on this ultra-processed reality, the refined seed oils is one of the biggest things you want to avoid. And that's the consumer industry that we're in, where capitalism has created these foods that can just last forever on the shelf. Obviously, there's a reason they had to do that, but it is not healthy stuff. Eating the seed oils is not serving us. Ben Greenfield's asked the question, I love this story. He said, if I was at, let's say, a fair or like a carnival, and I had the choice to eat, the cotton candy or a corn dog, which one do you think is better? You can put in the chat, if you're listening and paying attention, you can put your vote, put your guess. What do you think is better, corn dog or cotton candy? I'll answer that in a minute. But as we go down, here's some examples. We can get this frozen meat, we get these breast-fixed cereals, diet sodas, and especially other soda that's loaded with high fructose corn syrup. That's nasty. There's downsides to all that. And then once again, we're going to get this upgrade as we get these hidden downside signals that are bypassing our natural satiety. That's a really important phrase right there. Under the hidden downsides, it says bypass natural satiety signals, driving your cravings, draining your energy, and fueling inflammation. So these foods are designed to be something we eat more and crave more. And they've tricked us with these obesogens. And these obesogens are things that are designed to make us fat, like MSG. It's toxic stuff that is literally makes animals fat for experimental purposes. So you got to get rid of those. So we're going to get this root cause upgrade is what I'm saying here. One processed item per meal with a whole food alternative to help your body natural healing process. Just replacing one at a time. Just the next step. It doesn't have to be everything all at once sometimes. Just, hey, what is one bad thing I can get rid of? And what's one good thing I can put in its place? So All right, coming back to the question, who voted for the cotton candy? Well, the answer is the corn dog is the worst. And the reason that he recommended the corn dog worse was it's got those seed oils in it. Those seed oils are going to mess up your omega-3, omega-6 ratio, and those seed oils are going to sit in your body with high omega-6 inflammatory oils for a long time, months to years. Whereas the cotton candy, even with some, a little bit of coloring maybe, but the sugar you can just burn off and not necessarily have a long-term negative effect. So I thought that was a really surprising answer. Maybe it surprised you. In any case, if it did, you can say, surprise. So that's an interesting one. So there's some key additives that you might look for as you look in your foods. Processed things like nitrates and bromate. Did you know you get bromine from your bread? If you're eating processed bread, you're getting bromine. And bromine and bromide, like fluoride, is a replacement, and chlorine also, and chlorine especially, can kick iodine out of its binding sites. What does that mean? Well, iodine supports your thyroid. It protects from breast cancer. It protects from ovarian cancer. It protects from prostate cancer. Your body can use iodine as a radical to kill parasites. Almost every one of my patients is deficient in iodine. I had a 1.5-year-old come into my office yesterday, and I treated her all different ways. She had lazy eye. She had walking issues in her hips, and she was developmentally delayed. Well, part of that's driven by the iodine. That's the one nutrient I decided out of anything I could give her that I should give her was iodine. It's powerful. So making sure your iodine levels are sufficient, that's a big one. Eating seaweed and or supplementing on the side, those are some of the best ways to make sure you have iodine. So aspartame, BHT there, some of those preservatives, they're not only carcinogens, but they're just causing your body to be embalmed while you're still alive. You don't want those preservatives if you can avoid them. Sorbates and sulfites there. There's other risks associated with those. I already mentioned MSG, the obesogen in chips and seasonings. My kids are bringing home the Doritos. I'm like, no, we're not letting that be in our house. My daughter bought some meat tenderizer, wasn't it, yesterday? And she didn't know better. It had papain in it, which is the enzyme that digests the meat a little bit. But the main ingredient in that tenderizer was MSG. So my wife mentioned it. My daughter didn't know to look. I grabbed it and I threw it in the garbage can because that's where it belongs. It's not something I want in my body. And that's also true with high fructose corn syrup. And watch out for titanium dioxide. That's a common one you'll see in a lot of cheap vitamins. You don't want to be on titanium dioxide. It doesn't help you. You don't need food coloring in your vitamins. And about 90% of the cheap vitamins you buy at Walmart, it's kind of like McDonald's. Just because you sold most of them doesn't mean it's the best. It's got toxic food colorings in your vitamins. I promise you, you're not deficient in food coloring. So read those labels. Start to recognize some of those things we mentioned. Sugars, dextrose, maltodextrin, various processed syrups. You want to watch out for hidden sugars if you're trying to control your insulin levels. That's a really big one. The seed oils, we just mentioned how bad the corn dog was. You got soybean, corn, canola. Those are the top ones. They're also GMO, which means they're loaded with glyphosate potentially as well. That glyphosate Roundup toxin is poking holes in your gut, making leaky gut, making more allergies, making more problems. Okay, so of course the serving size, if you're counting your calories, I personally never count calories. I'm grateful that I haven't had to in my life as far as felt like a weight problem, but partly it's because I stay active. Partly it's because I'm avoiding a lot of those toxic obesogens as well. So in any case, you want to make sure your protein, a big one is prioritizing protein. That's the target. It says aim for less than 6 grams of added sugar, 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. And so that's the target is prioritizing protein. One of the ways I hack that is a lot of times I'll drink. In my drink, I'll drink amino acids throughout the day. Sometimes that's the way I'll skip a meal and I'll add that to my fasting protocols. Okay, so that's powerful. So here's some eat more, eat less, simple things. We want to eat more whole foods and whole proteins, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, organic poultry, pasture-raised eggs. The tofu and tempeh are the healthy versions of soy for some people, especially who are trying to support their estrogen levels. That'd be women mostly, right? And then healthy fats, eat more. Avocado, extra virgin olive oil, walnuts, chia seeds, grass-fed butter, ghee. I'd add coconut oil to that list. It's not on there. Coconut oil, I'd probably have a tablespoon or two a day. And that coconut oil is one of the ones that feeds the brain, goes into medium chain triglycerides, literally immediately can give you energy and doesn't really get stored as fat in your body. So they lied to us. They told us if you eat fat, you get fat. Well, they took all the fat out of foods and everybody got fatter because the truth is eating crappy carbohydrates, that's what makes you fat. Your body stores those sugars as fat and makes more insulin and makes more fat. That's your fat storage hormone that's released when you take those high sugar foods. So we're looking for, it says low sugar fruits, the berries, the blackberries, raspberries, lemons, and limes. Those also have really good nutrients like D-limonene that can help deal with fungal infections, other things like that. We're avoiding those ultra-processed things. They're easy to get trapped in. There are a few protein bars. I eat those in my life. So you got to hunt to find the good ones. And I always like one of my favorite tools, which we'll try and teach everybody through this university process. At some point, we'll definitely have a class on muscle testing yourself and listening to your own body's wisdom to tap in that way. So you can know, hey, can I get away with this protein bar? Or how bad is it going to kill me? Or, some other food that you might think is really healthy and your body may not want it. Am I having too much, pork, for instance? I wondered that this morning as we were cooking our pancakes. I was making some I call power pancakes. It's got, oats and eggs and cinnamon and clove. And I put some walnuts in there and we had some wild blueberries on top of it. And I was wondering, is this, pork fat? I'm eating some, after my bacon, we had some bacon. Is this pork fat going to be a sensitivity to me? So that's something I can find out and I can test and say, hey, am I having too much of that pork? And maybe it's not ideal processed. We are raising our own pork now, thankfully. So that's super cool. Having a farm to raise your own clean pork, that's a hard one to find. But when you can't find it, the other good one, a fat that's not on here I want to mention is tallow. The beef tallows that are out there, the grass-fed beef tallows. I wish my friend Dr. Jeff was on here, but he's a champion of that stuff. He'll eat it by the spoonful. And I think that can be definitely a healthy fat, you could argue, that grass-fed tallow. Avoiding, the sodas, we already mentioned that, coffee, over-sweetened coffee. That's a trap, especially when it's artificially sweetened or fake creamer. And I think a real cream can be decent. And some people can get away with some cane sugar now and again. And that's not going to be the end of the world. But then here's refined flours. I mentioned the bromine in the flours. And once again, those oils. So we got some things we've already mentioned, building your protein source and vegetable and a healthy fat. And I like this middle bottom. You see on this slide here, it says prioritize mineralizing hydration. Add electrolytes as appropriate. There's my hydration webinar. You want to get back on that and learn about how and why that's so important and how to get those osmolality, the right ratio of electrolytes in your drink so your cells can actually absorb it. All right. I don't know what my timing is here. I feel like we're cruising through a lot. Hope we're not losing anybody, but this is some foundations. And this is the principle, addition by subtraction. What does that mean? Well, sometimes it's more important what you get rid of than what you add in. Because if you have toxic foods that are inflaming you and contributing to the fire of inflammation, it says the food can fuel a fire or not fuel a fire, but sometimes it's not enough to put it out alone. So sometimes the not putting it out alone part makes you think about sometimes you got to deal with the parasites or the other infection or the toxic emotion or the heavy metal toxicity. But you're fueling that fire of inflammation by eating toxic inflammatory foods. And so it might be more powerful for you to eliminate some seed oils, eliminate some high fructose corn syrup and other toxic sweeteners than it is to put in a little salad every day. So those are keys. As we look at this, the common irritants, number one, the 5 worst foods. We'll hear this again, but gluten is a big one for majority of people. Eating a lot of wheat, especially as it's non-organic wheat that's really heavily glyphosated, pesticided. The dairy, for a lot of people, that's inflammatory. Those two are not everyone, and depending on your health and how leaky your gut is, you might get away with some of that. Just like soy and corn, you might get a little bit, but the corn is really GMO 90%. You can find some non-GMO corn that's cooked in avocado oil. I had some chips yesterday like that. If you're not sensitive to corn, you might get away with some of that. But first off, if you're having trouble with your diet and with your gut, with digestion, with some of the symptoms we're going to talk about in a minute here, then eliminating these big 5, wheat, dairy, corn, soy, and processed sugar, that's the place to start. That is the beginning. And then you replace it with those whole foods, more nutrient-dense alternatives, vegetables, proteins, healthy fats, nuts. I eat nuts fairly regularly. And here's that repairing the gut lining. And we're talking about targeted nutrients, and we're going to get a whole detailed class about this, healing the gut, because it might involve clearing the parasites, almost certainly will, balancing the fungal mold or parasites or whatever's getting your gut not to work. But here's some foundations to help support that process. L-glutamine, zinc, probiotics. Those are things that are cycling through my diet every day. Whether it's a probiotic from a healthy SIBO yogurt that's homemade, that's really amazing, or a probiotic that I'm taking a capsule once in a while. L-glutamine is in some of the drinks I use, the recovery drinks. And the zinc, of course, is an essential mineral that, of course, men especially are deficient in because we lose it in our ejaculate, but it's also deficient in women. It's a really important mineral for your immune function. So zinc is a really big priority, and it does help specifically to help make stomach acid as well, along with B6. You need to have a hot, fiery stomach to make that digestion work. And zinc can be part of that, as well as supporting a ton of other things. Right by magnesium, I'll mention magnesium here because that is the single most important mineral deficiency. If I was to choose one, almost everybody is deficient in magnesium if you're not supplementing it, and especially if you're eating processed foods, because the magnesium is not in there. So we're going to reintroduce, once you're kind of clean and your body's, feeling healthy and you're not having inflammation, you can maybe add some foods, maybe one at a time. Like, hey, what's it feel like when I add dairy back? Or what's it feel like if I have a little wheat here and there? Or what's it feel like, when I add certain other foods? And you can see it says just one food, 72 hours, and track your body's response. Okay. Now, one of the ways I want to mention here that you can avoid or harmonize to food sensitivities and allergies is what we talked about earlier, eating in a healthy state, blessing and praying over your food, harmonizing your body to those foods. You can literally harmonize and clear your own allergies to sensitivities to foods if you're careful about it. I was really sensitive to gluten, and I had a tiny bit every week because I was eating sacrament with my religious experience. And so I would treat myself every single time. I'd have that tiny bit, and I would treat myself and harmonize myself every time. And eventually that's one way my body's been able to tolerate that better. But I still try to avoid it and not have it on a regular basis. My genetics are really prone to that problem, less so with dairy. And my wife, of course, is just the opposite, which makes eating in our household sometimes a challenge. But she's patient as well as I. We work together. And the good news is we both kind of avoid some of it some of the time, or most of the time, actually. In any case, there's the personalized your biology part, which I just talked about. How Lisa and I are different because of our genetics. She can avoid the dairy completely and does much better. And I can avoid the wheat completely and I'll do better. So those are things you can listen to and figure out how your body's working and listen and be unique. So there's the roadmap. Get out of the standard American diet. Get out of that processed food baseline where a lot of people are living. A lot of my patients come in and they're not educated at all about this. And this is so foundational that it just can't be missed if you want to be really healthy. And there's the big 5 elimination we mentioned about. So eating the whole foods instead. And whole foods are things that don't have labels on them. And then we're getting the more targeted tools. The AIP is called the Autoimmune Paleo diet, and the Low-FODMAP. We'll talk about that more. That's fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyphenols. And that's why a lot of people think there wasn't such a thing as wheat sensitivity. It's just the FODMAP issues, because they do cause a lot of gas and bloating when people can't digest carbohydrates well. And that's just something to consider is, am I taking enzymes with my meals that helps that? Do I digest fats well? Some people have problem with protein. Those are the main 3 food groups. And of course, carbohydrates being the only non-essential one. But if you might challenge your body a little bit, like, well, how do I feel after a high carb meal? I know for me, it puts me to sleep for the most part. So I don't digest carbohydrates really well. Is kind of a key there. And then protein, what do I feel like a high protein meal? Maybe I need more stomach acid to digest that, or more pepsin is the main amino acid, or the enzyme rather. You got bromelain, papain. Those are also proteolytic enzymes, which can be used away from food, incidentally, to eat inflammation and to help allergy responses. But then finally, fat. And a lot of people have trouble digesting a lot of fat. The gallbladder is getting clogged up, and that's mostly from our toxic seed oil diet. Also to mention parasites and fungi and metals that are clogging up that gallbladder bile duct system. That's powerful to look at. So that's too much on FODMAP maybe, but I'll go back to it. So once again, we're starting where we are. We're not working for perfection. Maybe one small change, eliminating one toxic food, and then focusing on what I can do to add one thing at a time, progressing a little bit, every day a little bit. I think our diet continues to evolve. I'm looking at Lisa as I look across the room. She's supporting me from the background here. But yeah, just one little change. Hey, how can we make our diet a little better this year? What's one thing we can add in? Hey, how can we get one more healthy meal, one more healthy recipe? that we can repeat. Like she made a fish meal the other day, and she made a gluten-free crust on it. It was unbelievable. You're gonna make that again, right? I'm hoping so. Okay, so the roadmap. Simplicity over perfection. Start simple. Just get rid of the labeled foods as much as you can. If it comes in a package, it's great to avoid it. Have some real food with real ingredients that you can actually pronounce. That's a general rule. Watch out for the restrictive short-term things. We want a program for longevity. Unless you're dealing with symptoms in the short term, like if you come to my office, I might tell you, hey, you got to avoid this food for 3 weeks at least. And let's come back after you've avoided it for 3 weeks. Make sure it's still clear, and then consider adding it back. Once you've added it back and we text you and you're still clear, that's when you can definitely cycle it into your diet. But a lot of people say on a rotation diet, maybe every 4 days. If you're something you're really sensitive to, you should not have it regularly. You'll build up those antibodies and you'll build up your histamine levels associated with that food response, and it's going to cause problems. So there's the whole food principle, listening to your body, staying flexible. It's a journey, not a destination. So patient with yourself, patient with your body. There's the big five once again. And if you don't know where gluten's found, there's the list: wheat, barley, rye. So those are the main things you want to avoid that cause gut permeability. Soy, once again, tempeh, miso, some organic fermented stuff may be an exception for a lot of people. The dairy, and interestingly, this came up that the grass-fed butter may be okay for some, and that's true. It's funny, Lisa says she's allergic to dairy, but she does grass-fed butter and it's really good for her, right? It seemed to test well, right? So that's a really interesting one. There's some of the symptoms you're going to watch for when it comes to a dairy sensitivity. How are your allergies? If you're having allergy symptoms or you're having asthma. We'll mention again, one of the ways to knock out allergies for some people is proper hydration, because the histamine response is a protective response to help your body's hydration levels. So if you're properly hydrated, your histamine levels will drop. So that's something to remember. Lisa gave an amazing testimonial 3 weeks ago about that, how it changed her world. And there's the corn. Interestingly, just like wheat, the corn of today is not the corn of yesteryear. And the wheat of today is not the same. It's been changed and modified in certain ways that aren't necessarily good, and especially the GMO, obviously. So you might try it 2 to 4 weeks, be patient with your body, give it time to adjust, and then consider adding some of those things back. I want to mention down here at the bottom, it talks about sauces and starches. Oh, can you see that highlight? Oh, that worked, huh? Can you see that highlight? Cool. So there's sugar and there's especially high fructose corn syrup hidden in your sauces and in your dressings. So watch for that. That's one of the most common ones, but there's other ingredients that are in those packaged foods. Of course, the MSG. You want to watch out for those simple things. Oh, heck, and scroll, that worked. Where was that? That was neat. I didn't know I could do that. Sorry, figuring out how my technology works here. We were just, now we get back into that. This computer's smarter than I am. I don't know how I went to, no, it scrolls only. I've lost the control here. I got it. There we are. Oh, don't skip that one. We were on the right spot. So foundationally, begin here, get rid of the big five. Now we're going to go to the next slides about the targeted gut calming. That's where we're going to go into the low histamine, low FODMAP. And if you're really one that has a leaky gut and you have autoimmune conditions or severe sensitivities, this is when you get into this 8 to 12 weeks of restriction, removing even eggs. That's when we can test you on albumin is a common one, and nightshades. My genetics have a tendency to not eliminate nightshade toxins very well. That's where this lectin topic comes in. If you've ever studied the work of Dr. Gundry, he's wrote a book called The Plant Paradox, and how the plants have these lectins in them that can cause inflammation. And especially certain nuts and legumes is what Dr. Mercola feels are the most important to watch out for your genetics and maybe for your blood type. You've heard of blood type diet. I'll mention that here. Depending on your blood type, you might look at the legumes that are your lectin sensitives. So that's kind of an interesting one to think about. And like I said, nightshades, we can actually test people for the toxin of nightshades. It's called solanine. It's a really great article by Dr. Michael Liebowitz. If I was like Greenfield, I'd say, hey, let's put that in the show notes. A link to Dr. Liebitz's article about nightshades and solanines, and also about lectins, because we have in our office saponins, we have salicylates, We have oxalates. We can test your body with vials on these particular, kinds of lectins that we can see if your body's sensitive to those. And you can be aware that, hey, maybe I need to avoid some of those certain kind of foods. The other one's phytates. Phytates are mineral binders that can also, that may be one reason I grew up a lot of eating whole food and whole grain. You got to be a little careful with too much whole grain. It's got those high phytates, which can bind up some minerals. So that's where people for short term do things like a carnivore, eat a really simple diet. I don't know if you know the story of one of my favorite teachers is uh, Michaela and who am I thinking of? Michaela and the Lion Diet. What's the last name? I can't think of his last name all the time. Peterson. Yeah, Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson. So Lion Diet, as what they were following, is they were only eating like hoofed animals, only eating beef really, because their symptoms were so bad. And of course, they felt like they had to do that for long term because I think they were not addressing the true cause level issues of the parasites, infections, metals, maybe emotions that were keeping their body in leaky gut state to be able to tolerate more broad foods. But even a guy like Paul Saladino, who was a big hardcore only carnivore, decided, hey, I got to start adding some berries and some nuts, or not nuts, but some honey, some different things to his diet even. But I think if you have a healthy diet, and a healthy body, you can eat a variety of foods, and you probably should eat a variety of foods because we know that, the gastroenterologists teach us that having a diverse microbiome fed by multiple different kinds of fibers and foods of different varieties is a key for your long-term health as well. So this restriction concept of being fully restricted for long term shouldn't have to last forever. 8 to 12 weeks, full elimination, slow reintroduction. And I'm going to say, if you're going to do this, you might want to have a practitioner working with you who's going to help you get to some of the other cause level issues you may have. And I just mentioned some real details there, the different lectin types, the nightshade toxin, those other things that you got to watch out for. And then certainly the infections or the toxins or the emotions that might be underneath your particular need for healing. Maybe there's something chiming there for us that we can think about. So here we go. Next one. Some paleo pitfalls or even keto pitfalls. People have some of these same things. They don't eat enough. They're not eating enough food. They're trying to restrict too much. And there's another one we just talked about, diversifying. For a while you might do short term to heal, to get your body a rest. And for the most part, maybe the carnivore type route or something is a way you want to try. But you want to rotate those proteins and get those other vegetables in, get a variety. Your body likes variety. Even of course, in our supplementation, want the same supplement over and over again, month after month. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't test energetically for 99% of people. So I like to rotate all my vitamins, all my supplements. Too many baked goods. I love that because I love it. There's something called a muffin vegetarian, for instance. But this is the opposite paleo's opposite of vegetarian, obviously. But eating too many baked goods, nut flours, even cassava and other ones like that can spike your blood sugar. And certainly people who are vegetarian who eat muffin vegetarian, they're only eating a bunch of muffins because they choose their muffin over their steak. I'm not sure that's a healthy alternative. I think the majority of my colleagues would agree that that's not the highest way of eating. I'm a big fan of eating in more of a paleo way, more of a omnivore way. Watching out for hidden additives. We've talked about that. That could be an issue. The gums and thickeners, we're going to talk about what specifically those are. That could be sensitivities to you. And we've talked about the poor quality vegetable oils. And that's why it's rare for me to choose to eat out anywhere because 99% of the time they're cooking in soy oil, right? So we've already talked about those better choices. So do that. All right. And let's see how to move that one. Gluten 101, where it's hidden. Oh, look, this one says high fructose corn syrup, by the way. And this gluten-free food, it's not a good food. This is a toxic gluten-free food. That's one of the pitfalls of going gluten-free too, is choosing lots of sugars, blue and yellow food colorings. It's gluten-free. That actually makes me kind of laugh. We talked about this already, the cross-contamination. Interesting, they're saying only 1 in 100 people are celiac, but gluten sensitivity can be a lot more people, 6% or more. And I find more than that probably. I would say more like 20% of people. And most people would do even better just to do a zero gluten trial for 90 days or something to get rid of the gluten and see how their immune system's doing and see if that helps get rid of some of their joint pain and other things. So that's the other one. But some of the wheat hiding places you see there, modified food starch, malt, it can be hidden in soy, for instance, or soy sauce. There's the word. So that's one people know about if they're celiac. But there's hidden gluten in a lot of places. So watch out for that. And there's the difference between the two. Kind of covered some of that, but some of the symptoms you're going to look out for right there. You'll know if you have some of these, if you're having those issues. Another one I'm going to add to this list is headaches. Gluten sensitivity can have some similar symptoms, but I had a patient come to my office who was a young girl and she was having migraines. Dr. Mercola wrote a really good article about how wheat can cause severe migraines. That might have been one of my challenges with migraines as I grew up. But avoiding the wheat may not be enough. You got to get to the cause sometimes. And usually it's the allergy, according to some of my colleagues, is just the messenger of another imbalance, which is the leaky gut caused by the infections we've talked about, or the toxins or the emotions. So I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but there it again, 90-day elimination trial, identify those gluten issues. It's a big one, and it's one of the first ones that most people should try. But I would do just one. If you're kind of experimenting on yourself, you should avoid all of the big five that we mentioned, and then maybe seeing about introducing them, reintroduction, after your body's reset. All right, so now on to some histamine. And are your symptoms in this category? The rashes, the hives, the headaches, the congestion, digestive issues, the skin allergies, unexplained rashes, the eczema flaring, the facial pressure, the chronic sinuses, the digestion. There's so many things underneath histamines. And actually, it does say it, sleep issues. We have a new way of testing it. Kind of excited about all the histamine receptors that we can check and treat. There's 4 different histamine receptors, 1, 2, 3, 4. They show up different places in your body. They can cause, according to your genetics, different symptoms. And this is the list of pretty much all of them, though. And so that's kind of cool. You can see there's so many varied symptoms of both with the high histamine. It's a powerful neurotransmitter that protects your body from dehydration, though. So start with hydrating is my thought on the histamine tolerance. But we do have a whole handout in the other program about specifically getting rid of high histamine containing foods. And one of the key things you can do as you do that, it talks about the bottom here, the diamine oxidase enzyme, DAO. That's the one that your body may not make well. And certainly if you have a leaky, damaged gut, it's even worse. And so that's one thing we're doing with Lisa right now. She's been trying to take histamine DAO every day, lowering that histamine load, along with staying hydrated, see if we can finally get underneath. Now, she can tolerate dairy a little here and there, and she sneaks a bite here and there, but we'd love to be able to eat a lot and not have a problem. And so we're not all the way there with that particular one. And so doing the DAO with every meal, or certainly with the high histamine meals, is a way it's going to lower her whole histamine load, help that gut recover a little deeper, as she doesn't particularly try to avoid exactly all the high histamine foods. It's kind of a shortcut. And that's a very restrictive diet as far as trying to avoid all the histamines. And so there's a page on that, but this is going to be a big one. And you can ponder about that. Which histamine foods am I really aggravating or reacting to? And this can be above and beyond just a simple IgA, IgG allergy, which is a fun one. You can prick your finger and send it to the lab. We can test 90 foods that way. That's a useful tool for those food sensitivities and allergies. But as we're saying here, this histamine intolerance is a whole nother category. And you can have this issue underlying all of that and or separate from that. So if you haven't learned about histamines, this is kind of a big page. And on that note, I think I'm more than halfway. I'm going to say everybody should stand up and decompress a little. I don't know if I've done that yet. I got a cool table here. I can raise this right up and do a standing spinal decompression. Take a big breath, wiggle and move a little bit, and I'm going to standing. How cool is that? We know the new cigarette is sitting. So, sitting too long can be a problem. And I'm kind of tall. This table goes way up. Thank you. Thank you, Billy. I'm in it still. I'll adjust my camera just a little bit. So yeah, get some wiggle out, get some decompression. There's a lot to absorb here. Good news is we've covered, I think, 90%, or not maybe 90, but 70% through. Almost want to pause for questions. Maybe if you noticed I haven't paused for questions this whole time, we will have some questions at the end. You can take some notes if you haven't, and I'll try to answer any of them and go back to any of these slides if you have questions, okay? So there's the strategy you might use when it comes to lowering your histamines. 30 days, seeing how that's affecting your body to reset, eliminating the high histamine foods. And some of the big ones are right there. the fermented foods, the processed meats, alcohols, vinegars, aged cheese. Avocado is not on that list, but it's a big one. Using the DAO enzyme. It's kind of a spendy one, but it might be worth it for you to lower your histamine for a while and give your gut a rest. I'm not going in order, but I'm going this way. The leftovers. So minimize eating leftovers because, of course, the mold is going to grow on that food as it sits. That's going to increase the histamine and the reaction causes that way. And once again, this can be a piece, but if you're not addressing the root cause that you have that's causing your leaky gut, that's the infection or the stress emotionally, then that's an important piece. And there's some helpful nutrients. My mom had a bee sting reaction. This is the number one ingredient we recommended to her was quercetin, stinging nettle, to help try and calm that reaction a little bit. And there's also a special form of quercetin that's enzymatically activated. You might learn about if you're going to use quercetin, but it does have some great benefits. Interesting, quercetin and fisetin is the other one that's a key ingredient in some of the senolytics. There's products that are out there that are designed to help kill off the zombie cells in our body, the senile, senescent cells. They say they're just causing inflammation. And so quercetin is one of them. Also, quercetin is one of the ones that's used for COVID sometimes in treating that extra inflammatory reaction from all those cytokines, the cytokine storm and whatnot associated with certain infections like COVID. So eating fresh foods and sometimes tracking your symptoms to see what your specific triggers might be, see what your tolerance level are, and then looking at maybe introducing those foods a little bit at a time. Once again, giving it some time, waiting a few days to see how your body's reacting. Okay, so here's FODMAP. You could say, I've got interaction still. You could say, hey, I have heard of FODMAP or I haven't. Either way, you could make a vote. But the FODMAP is right here. Here's the full list. The fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyphenols. And so these are the ones, those carbohydrates that are feeding gut bacteria. They could be okay for some of your bacteria. You want the polyphenols, but some of them, and some people, especially with imbalances, SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or irritable bowel syndrome, or if you're just plain sensitive in your gut, then these could be a problem. And so you might watch out for and try and avoid the FODMAPs. They're causing these symptoms down here at the bottom: the bloating, the distension, the abdominal pain, the nausea, the constipation, diarrhea combo. Hey, I got a patient I got to talk to tomorrow about that. I'm glad I'm looking at this. She needs to try FODMAP. So there it is, the FODMAP. The fermentation problem is these bacteria are creating lots of gas because they're fermenting these FODMAP foods. So it's not also just what you eat, but like I says, how much and how often. If you're eating a lot of it, it's going to cause a problem. If you're eating just a little, then your body might be able to do that. A little. It says timing critical. How well is your gut full or empty at the time? How well you're going to digest that. Those are all considerations when it comes to FODMAP. So there's the FODMAP idea, identifying ones. Like garlic sometimes showed up for me in the past as being a sensitivity. Certain fruits, identify which ones are the triggers for you, remove it for a few weeks, let the symptoms come back, and watch your portion levels. We just talked about avoid stacking, meaning putting a lot of them together in the same meal, and then reducing one at a time and on dose ladders to monitor how you're doing. And here's saying combining with the paleo or the autoimmune paleo if needed, depending on you're listening to your body. Once again, that's the key, the therapeutic target. And ideally, it's not forever. Ideally, you can stabilize, heal your gut, rebalance your microbiome somewhat, and then reintroduce these foods. So there's a general healthy combination. Oh, this is the thing. Everybody thinks, your body can't digest multiple things. And I think that is a myth. I mean, if your digestion is strong and robust like it should be, and you have the acid in your gut, and you have the pancreas working well, making amylase and other enzymes to digest the carbohydrates, and your saliva, where amylases first started to digest carbohydrates, if that's all working like it should, then you can combine these foods and not have a problem. There are some certain pairings and things you want to avoid, maybe to help this work a little better, maybe for short term, once again, if your gut's not fully healthy. But there's some considerations that work. And a lot of times I will use these. I'll use fat and vegetables and proteins to begin my meal, get my fat solubles going on, and I'll do the fiber and carbs that slows glucose absorption, and I'll do that after sometimes. Some people, if they ferment that causes a problem if you're doing it at the end of a meal. So that's listening to your body and considering what you're digesting well and what you're not digesting well. And here's a big one. This is what I get into a lot of trouble with because I'll overeat. We're supposed to eat till we're maybe 80% full and that's it, right? So eat till you're satisfied and not till you're fully satisfied. Or eat till you're not all the way to the top. It's not Thanksgiving every day, right? So, and even once in a while, it's not the greatest thing for us. So there's a consideration about food combining and my thoughts on it. All right, so it's not the combination itself, it's your body's ability to digest them. So reintroduction strategies, we've kind of covered this really well already. But once again, you're monitoring those symptoms. Give you guys a minute on that. Listening for waiting and listening a little bit at a time as you reintroduce foods. A key here is making sure we're having the right prioritizing protein. And there's what I would consider a top issue. Most people aren't getting enough protein. If there's a macronutrient we're deficient in, it's the right high quality protein and potentially the ability to absorb it. Keep in mind, if you're 50 plus, your body's ability to make digestive enzymes has declined somewhat. You might pulse in some acidic things, whether it's actual hydrochloric acid or whatever, or pepsin to help support that digestion, to help support the ionization of the minerals that you're eating so your body can get in an absorbable form. And so that's something to watch out for. I know I was definitely acid deficient because I was mineral deficient. It's kind of a cyclical issue. You can't digest the minerals, so you can't make the acid. You can't make the acids, you can't digest the minerals. And so the answer was to replace both for a little while, right? To get high level minerals and pulsing in the acids to help my body digest both. And that'll help repair a lot of gut issues for a lot of people. And paradoxically, it's not on this page, but it comes to my mind now, is a lot of people with heartburn, they're thinking, oh, I gotta quell that acid. I gotta take some antacid. Well, the truth is you're making too little acid or too late, and it's not signaling your pyloric sphincter, at the top, your lower esophageal sphincter here to close off like it should. So you're getting a reflux issue. Of course, there's hiatal hernia stuff. Massaging that down can be part of that, reducing GERD symptoms. But a big piece for a lot of people is to take more acid, signal your body to shut that lower esophageal sphincter and allow that digestion to happen appropriately with more acid, solving the problem rather than less. So I think pretty much everything on this page we covered pretty well as far as getting the healthy fats. This is a good overview of what we've talked about. So some smart carbs. Where we go? This scrolling thing's not working as well as I wanted. Oh, hey, it worked. Back to this. So something to consider keeping in your diet when it comes to vegetables, even if you're going to be a little bit paleo, or you're going to be a little bit rather carnivore-ish, is a little bit of these non-starchy vegetables. I know there's Dean Ornish's, his diet was, a big vegan type guy. And he said, hey, we got to eat high density nutrient foods. And he would say that the kale's the top of the list, mustard greens, some of those spinach, or some of those ones that have really high nutrient per calorie. So once again, the quality, not the quantity, getting high quality, high nutrient dense foods was really big. And the cool thing about some of these non-starchy guys is an asparagus, we eat that regularly. Regularly, I say like at least monthly, it seems like a couple times a month maybe. And probably all these we do all these. But not every day necessarily, cycling, but they can give those nutrients to your gut as well with the non-starchy ones that won't spike your blood sugar. And we eat the berries and legumes. Probably could eat some more. Like I try to get lentils in our diet more again. I'm a big fan of sweet potatoes. Quinoa is an interesting one. Some people can't tolerate the lectin in quinoa. My brother-in-law, interestingly, he breaks out in hive type reactions, right? Histamine reactions with quinoa. So that's interesting, or causes gut pain for certain people. But that's one to cycle in. Carb timing. This is really important for me. I like immediately post-workout to have most of my carbs. This is exactly what I do. I do lower carb portions earlier in the day, and then post-workout, I do a little bit more carbs. If I have a bunch of carbs for breakfast, that shuts me down. I got to be careful with that. It puts me to sleep for the most part. Once again, I think it's because I have poor carbohydrate digestion. A little pancreatic insufficiency is what they call it. EPI, there's a new drug out there. exocrine pancreatic insufficiency is what they have drugs for. That means the exocrine function, meaning the function of my pancreas to digest, to secrete enzymes into my small intestine to digest things. That's technically outside of my body, which is called exocrine. We refer to endocrine, which is meaning inside the body, endo. And the exocrine part of the body is the amylase, those other digestive enzymes. There's proteases that your pancreas makes. And that might be a little bit of a weakness that my body's had in the past and not being able to digest carbs really well. I think that's something that's getting better and better, though, thankfully. So there's fiber. That's something I give a lot of patients. They bring to me sometimes Metamucil or other toxic, artificial sweetened fibers. And so I bought like 5 different fiber formulas to muscle test which ones were the best. And I found something I really like. It does have some psyllium. It does have some pectin. It does have a couple other fibers in it. I wish I had that to show you. The fiber formula, unfortunately, it's a capsule form, but fiber is one of the things you want to make sure you have in your diet. Oh yeah, flaxseed. We had some ground flaxseed in our breakfast this morning. But that's one of those ones that can feed the good gut bacteria and prevent colon cancer. So this is a little strike against the carnivore crowd, maybe because there's no fiber in meat. But I mean, that's yet to be seen. I don't know how Michaela Peterson's going to do as far as colon cancer in the future with the lion diet. But interestingly, people like Paul Saladino have decided to add in some healthy polyphenols and other fibers, probably a little bit with some berries and things. But fiber is an interesting topic. So there's that. And then there's hydration, and that's our whole seminar about that one. And potentially thinking about drinking water, you may not drink a whole lot with your meal. Recognize it can dilute some of your digestive juices. Incidentally, I'll think about that right now, and I haven't had a drink. It's been more than half an hour. Every half hour, maybe you should have a drink or so, right? Drinking throughout the day away from your meal, better plan for a full hydration. So some beginner meal ideas. Well, this is something we have because we got chickens, right? Veggie omelets with a little avocado. That sounds like a common breakfast. The full fat yogurt doesn't happen too often, but it does happen some with chia seeds or a handful of berries. I recommend it. Some midday stuff. That's where I'm doing meal replacements on some days of the week because I'm at work. And so I'll do high quality meal replacement, which is, protein with a little bit of healthy fat in there. Sometimes I'll just use my grass-fed whey protein, add a little olive oil to it, mix it right up, sometimes maybe a scoop of greens, and I'll have a quick breakfast, or rather lunch, midday recharge. Love to have wild salmon. Watch out for farm salmon. I didn't mention that, but farm salmon's got artificial coloring in it. Other thing is it's not so great. The wild part here is an important piece to consider. It's a little more expensive. That's why I don't have salmon in general at a restaurant, because it's not going to be wild. In any case, olive oil, vinaigrettes, we do those, turkey, lettuce wraps, those are great. Cheese, you can do goat cheese. Sometimes people can tolerate that well if you can't do, cow, dairy. That sometimes can be a good choice. We're eating dinners, we're eating chicken breast, we're eating, our homemade pork, our homegrown pork, our grass-fed beef. We're breaking it. Maybe we don't have tofu very often. I'm not a big fan, but I did have it on the plane, interestingly, on my gluten-free meal on the plane, and had that. Roasted broccoli, we do that, garlic butter, tossed with olive oil. Absolutely. Some smart snacking, mixed nuts, yes. Olives, yes. I had that last night. We had that along with some people can't tolerate a lot of salsas if they're really sensitive to nightshades. But if you only pulse in a little bit, it's about the load level when it comes to the nightshades for most people. And if you have a healthy system, even if you're somewhat sensitive to the nightshades, you might get away with a little here and there. The beef jerky we love the Chomps and the other brands that are out there that have the grass-fed beef sticks. Those are great. I love those for snacks. Celery sticks with almond butter. That's something I have in my house. So those are some ideas. If you haven't, looking at some other ones, some really easy ones, maybe just add one of these to your program that you're doing to kick out something that's not so good. That'd be a step in the right direction. But, there's some time-saving strategies to make it when you're busy. Sometimes I'll just eat the beef sticks and things and keep it simple. But there's some beginning meal ideas. So let's go into ketosis now. And what does that mean? Well, that means your body's burning fat and not sugar. And that's sometimes a really good deal because you want to burn that fat when you have extra, especially, and also because it's less inflammatory. It's going to burn cleaner in your body and not create as much inflammation. So for most people, getting in your body into some ketosis here and there if not regularly, or even 90% of the time, I think would be ideal. And that's why I send people a lot is I send that keto quick start guide. So they can kind of get started with some keto principles and then add the intermittent fasting, which we're going to get into. But this is what keto means is, getting into there with more energy, less sugar in your body. You're going to have a lot of healthy fats, a little bit of protein, and very, very little carbohydrates. So like I said, more energy could be up, your hunger cravings, you get mental clarity because your brain can burn those ketones just fine. That's where fasting mental clarity comes in as your body gets into ketosis. And so, it typically takes 2 to 7 days of strict carbohydrate restriction to enter ketosis, or it can also be done with modified fasting, which we're going to do. We continue that process. If you haven't ever been invited to one of our fasting classes, every quarter we're doing a extended fasting class, 2 to 5 days with every equinox and every solstice. That's a habit I'm going to make a ritual of in my life to help reset my insulin sensitivity and reset my body and obviously get into ketosis for a while. Okay, so some keto-friendly ideas. A simple guideline is really reduce your net carbs. 20 to 40 grams of carbs is ideal. And if depending on your activity levels, you might get away with more and your muscle mass level. But, the 5-1-1 approach here is talking about 5 keto days, 1 high carb day where you kind of eat a lot, and 1 optional 22 to 24-hour fast per week. So this is bridging off of that keto quick start guide I sent out because it's that cyclical process you want to kind of have. And once again, electrolytes really important as you're going in keto, more salts. Most people can use more salts, especially magnesium, to get rid of any keto flu symptoms. The hydration really important as you do that. And once again, prioritizing protein, getting that sweet spot, the amount of protein is important when it comes to keto, that you're going to actually increase a lot of fats rather than protein. And so for short term, for some people, that this keto eating can be a breakthrough. And that leads easily into intermittent fasting, which is one of my favorite ways to get my body into ketosis, is doing intermittent fasting. Now, you got to listen to your body. It can be stressful for you. And we know in our fasting class, we teach a ton about this, but, fast like a girl or eat like a girl, that Mindy, what's her name? Pell. Mindy Pelz. She's the gal that wrote a great book about that topic. And that's a breakthrough for my wife who hated fasting in the past and now is learning to love it and have great experiences with it. So eating cyclically and eating with different timing. We probably do an intermittent fast using my mud water recipe. Commonly, we do fat fasting. So I'm drinking the mud water, brain healing, anti-inflammatory weight loss elixir, which is kind of my own version of a coconut, mushroom, coconut oil, a little grass-fed butter, the main fats, in with whatever drink you want. Sometimes we'll make it green. Sometimes, a lot of times we'll do the coffee and the chocolate to make it a mocha. That's a beautiful way to do it. And we'll add in those other healthy spices, cinnamon and clove and ginger and a little turmeric. And that's someone having at least 3 or 4 days a week. And that's an easy thing to replace. I often do a breakfast and sometimes lunch as well with that to make an intermittent fast, a fat intermittent fast, and help my body get into that ketosis place. So that's an idea that you might find helpful. Intermittent fasting, I think, is a really powerful tool. If you're not using it and you're just eating all the time, it might be a good idea because your body's so stressed. For one thing, I want to say some people can't fast. Their adrenals and their liver are so unhealthy. Your body doesn't know how to do it. So starting slow is really important. But ideally, a healthy person is going to be metabolically flexible and using intermittent fasting because our food is just too much available, too much all the time. And so I'm looking forward to sharing our next class about the old lady, 101 or something, saying, you guys eating all the time. You think you're shaky and weak and tired. That's not starvation. You're not hungry. Sugar. She says, that's a sugar tantrum. It was really funny and cute to hear her talk about that. I'll share that with you in our next fasting class. But be aware that, your body does have sugar tantrums in a way. I mean, you're addicted. That's what she says. You're not hungry. You're addicted. You're having a sugar tantrum. So let's be careful. You're probably addicted. And working your body a little, weaning it and teaching it to be metabolically flexible would be powerful. So here's how you can start slow. Just 12 hours. That's the easy start, right? Try and work toward 12 hours. And if that becomes easy, make it to 14, then 16, and maybe once a week, 22 to 24 hours of full fast or daily fast. And then once a quarter, like I said, I'm going to be doing at least 3 to 5 days of a modified fast, if not, a full fast on one of those days where it's really even dry, potentially. We'll talk more about that. But there's fasting. If you're not using it, we got to talk about when to eat. And sometimes it's better to just not eat. When and why and who, but the when is sometimes not at all. Tons of benefits. So many benefits to fasting and intermittent fasting. So good. If you have fewer meals, that's one of the easiest things. You're not eating, so it's fewer meals. All these other things we've covered pretty well. But do watch out for your body and listen, because there could be symptoms that you want to, initially teach your body a little bit of time. And one of the best ways to mitigate that problem is have a little bit of amino acids, have a little electrolyte drink, have a little something to tide you over, but not watching out for that binge. That's the binge restrict cycle. You got to be listening to your body and loving yourself. That's always the key. Listen to your body and love yourself. And a little bit of time, just like we're talking about changing our diet. Once again, it's the progress over perfection. Don't beat yourself up as you do this. Love yourself in the process. A little bit at a time is better than none at all. So here's an action plan. This is what we would type up for you in our step-by-step guide, Integrating Better Nutrition. First, day one, stock up on the healthy stuff. Get rid of those sugary snacks. Read some labels. Get rid of the junk. Swap at least one additive heavy product and try and get something clean. I was real grateful. My wife had me digging in our fridge last night. She said, I know we have some ketchup in there. And I didn't think we could have had any, but I found it, and it was the right kind, the one that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup. So hurrah, we found the right one. And we're staying with that. That's an easy one right there. Is your ketchup is probably toxic because it's got high fructose corn syrup, unless you're really aware. But building a plate around, not too many carbs, around protein and healthy vegetables and healthy fat, starting that fasting slowly but surely. Aiming for movement. We're going to talk about this in a whole nother class about movement, postprandial walking, but movement after eating, very powerful thing to control your blood sugar, is they call it postprandial exercise. So that's important. And extending that window as you get better and as you get healthy, you can try capping the carbs at 50 to get to a good ketosis level. And if you're really active, you can probably find that more is better. Dr. Ben Greenfield says he likes 150 to 200 carbs a day, which might be more than most people because, he's really lean and really, really, really active, even more than I am. Matter of fact, he'd be walking right now on a treadmill while he's talking. Maybe I'll get a treadmill in here. Billy, what do you think? So I can walk while we do that. That'd be fun. Anyway, breathe deep. That's always something you can do. And there's the keto trial. Keep it simple. There's a good one. Sam's and green for dinner. That's a good idea. If you haven't tried ketosis, you don't know what that feels like. It's something to learn from. And then here's day 7, prepping a little bit at a time. So you have options that are on the go. We talked about some of those short, easy snacks so your body doesn't starve and so you can feel like you're supported. So this is a summary page. Addition by subtraction, get rid of those big 5. Make sure you're building around a healthy protein and vegetables. We've covered that. All those different flexibility tools. I'll mention here that we do have some cool things coming up. I think this is my second to last page, is it? Yeah. So as you look at this last page, I will mention that we are doing this totally complimentary free right now, which is part of my Divine Connections Ministry program. And we have a way you can support a little bit now if you want by donation. I have a cool couple giveaways for people who do choose to support us in this. My intention is to keep this going on and on the rest of my life, probably. As I learn, I want to share. And this is no better way to share than get it out there with some kind of recording. Thanks for all those who helped participate today. As I come back down, I'm trying to get low so I can show you this super cool wireless charger we got. Oh, it won't reach. The cord won't reach, but it was plugged in. Oh, stop. So this wireless charger says infinite love and gratitude and lights up. It's so cool. I was pretty proud that we made this one. I can't plug it in, otherwise you see it light up green. It's really, really, really kind of cool. Setting the intention out there. But if you want to make a donation of is it 30 or more, then you can get one of these for free. I have this little guy here. It's basically ear pods, also infinite love and gratitude on it. If you can see that. But once again, progress over perfection. Let's get a little better. Let's improve our lives and our diet. Share some of the knowledge you've learned today with a friend so you can be more encouraged to implement it yourself. That's a key to implementing something, is to share it with someone else. And be prepared for next week. We're going to do a Q&A with a short comment. We're going to do a meditation class in 2 weeks. And then in 4 weeks, Lisa's going to present on reprogramming your mindset, reprogramming your thoughts so you can get some more good thoughts going in. And at this point, I guess we can open up for any questions. But okay. I don't know how to see. Thank you. Is any I'll get it right here. Thanks, I think. Oh, you put that in there. I don't see it. Actually, read it to me, please.
It says, what are your thoughts on eat breakfast like a king,
Oh, yeah.
lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper?
Yeah. So I've heard it, lunch like a prince, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. I think that's a good way to be cyclic about food. And depending on your activity levels, that might be a great answer for you. But here's my bottom line on that is maybe you shouldn't eat 3 meals a day. Maybe you shouldn't be full meals. Maybe there are other healthy snacks in there, especially if you're intermittent fasting, you're not going to eat 3 meals a day. But I have heard that, and I do like to do that on the days that I eat. Like today, I had a little bit of coffee, drink in the morning. I guess we had a little tea, and then I had a huge breakfast. At what time did we eat? 10:30? It was like a brunch. It was 11. But nevertheless, I ate a bunch, and it was good, healthy. It was like, it wasn't high carb, really. And then I went and worked out, because today I had time to do that. I went and exercised. So it does depend on when you're going to exercise a little bit. It depends on how that goes. Unfortunately, I get into a trap, and I know Ben Greenfield says this is probably one of the things that's not ideal for him either, is he likes to have a big meal at dinner time because that's like the family time to get together. And so that's one of the larger meals. And in general, they don't recommend that. To try and taper off your food toward the end of the day, I think would be wise for most people. And one thing to do is monitor your sleep somehow and see how it's affecting your sleep. But they say, eating 2 hours before going to bed is not so great. But then also some people say, hey, if I have a high quality protein that's a long burning protein and fats at night, it'll help my blood sugar stay stable and help me sleep better. So, there's going to be quantity issues there. I guess there's a lot to say about that. I don't know if there's any more clarity you want on the breakfast like a king concept. Some people say the breakfast is the most more important meal of the day. And I got to say, I don't go with that. Bottom line is because, 4 or 5 days a week, or probably 3 days a week at least, we skip breakfast. And our largest meal is going to be dinner, probably. But try to be an early dinner whenever possible and have some activity after dinner. But usually, a lot of times when I'm doing this intermittent fasting, I'm eating kind of a lot between 6 and 8 at night with some activity mixed in there, even 6 and 10 at night, which may be a little later than it would be ideal if I didn't have a work schedule to follow. But the good way to do that is I'll eat more of a lunch, so that way I can have a lighter dinner. But a lot of times I'll be skipping lunch more or less, and so that ends up being dinner even bigger. So yeah, the breakfast like a king doesn't work well for my version of intermittent fasting. Although I know some people do a great job by, skipping dinner. And that's not a cycle I'm familiar with 100%, but I know it works for some people. So that's a listen to your body thing and listen to your schedule, what works for you.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of the fasting experts say it's more about the window that you're eating during, because you need to consciously decide on certain days how big your eating window is. And so that kind of gets rid of the whole breakfast, lunch, and dinner idea anyway. They're saying you want to put your calories into your eating window, whether it's 2 hours or 12 hours. And so it just depends on where you are with your fasting on that day, is what I would say.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for that comment. I don't know who else. Yeah, thanks, Don. Recommend Lifeline to people for food. The Gabriel method is amazing. And Rose has a question. Is that the question we already answered?
Yeah. No,
go ahead.
I actually have another question. Kind of, I was really kind of surprised to hear about the fermenting portion of how, it's not always good for you, but it's I think it does depend on your gut. It's totally with your gut. So I was all into thinking, okay, so I need to get into more fermenting foods, but now I'm kind of changing my mind a little bit.
For me personally, it's I found that I had a histamine reaction. Now, see, first of all, realize that I was eating so many foods that were triggering me. I just didn't even know it was triggering me in the beginning. But as I began to realize and educate myself and learn more, I was like, oh, that's why yogurt was the worst possible food for me. It's dairy and fermented, right? And I was a big one to eat like kimchi or sauerkraut with every meal. And then I learned that it was a high histamine food. And when I realized that my issues were histamine related, I cut those out for a while. And now I eat them occasionally, not at every meal. So it really depends, because if your issues are not histamine related, you could tolerate those very well.
I would say that I'm more histamine related, so that's very good information. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dig into that then. Follow that prompting.
Yes.
Beautiful. So yeah, Lisa did put in that chat there that link as far as our donation page for the Divine Connections Ministry. And I'm really excited about continuing this process with the Q&A next week. I'm sure we'll have a great topic for you. And the meditation class, as inspired and confirmed for me, because I was going to do it anyway. I talked to Lisa about that meditation being the single most important thing. But that, David Wilcox said, hey, people aren't doing, global online meditation. Well, I would love this to turn into that. And I would love it to turn into the fasting class part, to be turning into that as well when we do that ritual fasting. Like, hey, if everybody's fasting and praying every quarter at least for extended 3 days, 5 days, getting their mind and their spirit lined up to just that peaceful place, I just think it could really begin to affect the entire planet in positive ways. So, even all those darkness that tries to get against us, and even if, Wilcox was taken out, as a lot of people think, and I think it's probably likely too, that can't prevail. That evil cannot prevail in our world like that when there's so much love and so much goodness coming through. In the end, God wins, and his goodness will rise above it all, I know. So I just want to contribute to my part of that, and I invite you to join me with that. So thank you. You already have. I appreciate all of you that's been here.
And can I say one more thing?
Please.
I really do. I'm very glad to hear you talk about meditation, because I really do believe that it is a very, very awesome thing that people need to do. But, me personally, I kind of have a problem meditating how I want to. So any kind of teaching that you would do would be awesome.
Cool.
Looking forward to it. I'm glad I'll get to see you in 2 weeks then. Save the date. It's going to be 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. Love and gratitude to everybody. Continue in the process of your evolution. Thank you. Good to see you, Diana. Good to see everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for the comment.